Welcome everybody to the review of another story which is Lost in Time, known as The Mythmakers, which was requested by A.WU, and I apologise with the long wait. I have to apologise to a lot of people that it takes requested reviews about a month or two. It's because I get so many and sometimes I don't really have the time to do it, and it puts a lot of strain on me as well, because if you type in Doctor Who DVD review or especially Doctor Who CD review, I'm usually the first person who comes up, so I do get a lot of requests. But someday I will sort that out and try and get as much reviews done as possible. But first, let's get that out of the way. Let's get straight into the review and the front cover of the CD, The Mythmakers, with William Hartnell right by here. We have the horse to represent the whole story, The Mythmakers. Vicky, we have, I forgot his name, but when it's on the back cover I will get him. And we have a Trojan guard by here and a Greek guard right by here, and the city of Troy in the background. BBC Audio and the original BBC television soundtrack. So it is just aside, we have Beat Doctor Who, The Mythmakers and BBC. Now we have the back with 2 CDs with this release, and it's an hour and 40 minutes approx. The Doctor and his companions meet with mythical Greek gods in this exclusive audio recording of a lost television story, The Lincoln Nation by Peter Purves. Have you ever thought of a horse? Now let's get to the blurb of this. To be hailed as a Greek god Zeus is a bit of a shock. Yes, it is exactly what happens when the TARDIS lands on the plains of Asia Minor, not far from the city of Troy, taken to the Greek camp by Achilles. The Doctor is introduced by Ackerman, that was the guy on the front cover, and Osidus, and forced to admit that he's less than godlike statues. He is then given just 2 days to come up with a strategy for defeating the Trojans. Meanwhile, Stephen and Vicky have been taken prisoner by the other side. The Trojans are convinced that Vicky is a spy, and to prove their loyalty, she must forge a plan to defeat the Greeks. Like the Doctor, she just has 2 days to do it. Luckily for the Doctor, a certain someone has already devised a scheme for beating the Trojans. Even if the wooden horse was invented for a piece of fiction written in the 18th century, it still works. As the opposition forces come face to face in a climatic battle, there are dangers for both Stephen and Vicky. By the time the TARDIS moves away again, it will have both lost and gained a crew member. Now we have the innards of this CD release. We have disc 1 and disc 2, and some advertisements for 8th Doctor or 8th Doctor, 10th Doctor audios. I've been listening to 8th Doctor audios, so that's why I got a bit confused. So there's booklet, and this is a 4-parter, and the parts are Temple of Secrets, Small Prophet to Quick Return, Death of a Spy, and Horse of Destruction, which is definitely the best part of the story, and just a picture of some of the characters who are in this story. Now, this story was written by Donald Cotton, which don't know if he's done any more, but I'll probably have to check that out. This story was first broadcasted on the 16th of October 1965 and last broadcasted on the 6th of November 1965. The cast is the Doctor, Vicky, Stephen, Achilles, Hector, Osidus, Rackerman, Menkelis, Cyclops, King Priam, Paris, Cassandra, Messenger, and Troilus. I hope I'm saying their names properly. Now, down to my overall thoughts on The Mythmakers. It's a lot like the Romans story. It's a very comedic, historical story, this one is, and when I've been looking at reviews for the Romans and the Mythmakers, they are very similar stories, very comedic, and they've said that younger audiences don't really like either the Romans or the Mythmakers, but older fans do prefer the Romans and the Mythmakers because they're comedic. I don't know, just stands out to older Doctor Who fans more, and I like the Mythmakers. I thought this was a really it's not the best story I've ever listened to or ever heard or out of ever, but it's still a good story and I can definitely revisit this story, definitely. I was kind of like, I don't think this is going to be a very good story, and I have watched a reconstruction of this before and I didn't like it. That was 2013 I didn't like it, but on audio format, I don't know why, I just preferred it more. Maybe I had a bad mood whilst watching the reconstruction, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. The positives of this is all the characters, they're just on top form, and I think the comedy elements do work pretty well in this, and that's probably the main thing about the story is the comedy. It's in the focused around the Mission to the Unknown and the Daleks' master plan, so this is really the departure of Vicky. Sort of gets a relationship with a 70-year-old in this one. I forgot his name. No, damn it, that's bad. I forgot his name, but they make a very good relationship, and of course this is the departure of it, and I think it's very beautifully done. Her departure ending was very beautiful and very emotional, and even though she's not really one of my favourite companions ever, probably not my least favourite, but not my favourite, she's probably in the middle, but she went pretty good in this story, and then Katrina joined in and had a bit in the Daleks' master plan, she did as well, and so yeah, Mythmakers, yeah, it's very well written, very well beautifully written, and part 4 is definitely where all the action really happens, with the Trojans and the Greeks fighting, a lot of all good fighting action in this, and I would say I would really like to see that as well. Now, if I would rate this audio, I would probably rate it, I'll probably rate it as 7 out of 10 actually. Very, very good story this one is. I thoroughly really enjoyed this one. I don't really have a negative of this one, probably except it's just a tiny bit slow, that's all I can say. It just takes a little bit of a while for the story to actually get into progress. But that's not really a biggie. I still find this fun and enjoyable story, but nothing like spectacular. I would like to, it would be good to have this story return, but it's probably not on my highest priority to be returned, but I think it would still be something nice to see because I think it's very well done. So that was the review on the Mythmakers. I would say guess it if William Hartnell is your favourite or Vicky's your favourite, and then I think you'll probably like this story a lot, and it's just, all I can say, it's a very fun run around story. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's just something, well, it's just something nice, and then the seriousness goes into the Daleks' master plan, so it sort of calms down in the story. So thank you very much for watching the review of the Mythmakers. My next video will be my top 10 Jon Pertwee stories revisited, and my next review will be, I don't know, I will have to look at the list again. I think it's the Abominable Snowman, or the Marco Polo, or the Nightmare Fair. It was one of those. I always decided to see which one it is. So thank you very much for watching the review, and I'll see you in my next video.